open for a minute, give us a blast of fresh air.
Today, we're heading into Wrangell St. Elias National Park, the largest national park in the United States, which is found right here in Alaska. The only way to access this remote area is by flying in and out on a small bush plane from the small town of McCarthy. Just landed at Iceberg Lake in the Chugach Mountains near to Wrangell St. Elias. We'll be hiking a 40-mile backpacking route from Iceberg Lake to Bremner Mine, which is also commonly known as Seven Pass Route. We're going to hike through some incredible terrain within the Chugach Mountains as we find our way across glaciers and rivers, climb high mountain passes, and bushwhack through thick alders. After getting dropped off, we left our heavy packs on the airstrip and spent the early afternoon hiking towards Iceberg Lake. We didn't end up making it all the way to the lake, but it was really fun to wander around this area, the silty streams that flow down the mountains, and the wildflowers that filled the valley floor. We made our way back to the airstrip, picked up our packs, and started our 8-day backcountry adventure towards Bremner Mine. We continued up the valley, passing a beautiful glacial-fed lake. After traversing across the glacier, we tried to stay on a route that avoided snow-covered sections of the glacier. As the sun started to set and the air was getting colder, we decided to set up camp on top of the glacier. I never anticipated that we would camp on top of a glacier, but I'm so glad I packed my 20-degree sleeping bag because I slept so comfortably. We woke up to another beautiful day in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. We made our way off of the glacier and found ourselves walking parallel to the river that flowed through the valley. The first pass we had to climb was coming up quickly. We found a gully with a creek flowing through it, and some of it was still covered in snow. We started our climb up the pass and even got to practice some of our bushwhacking skills. We continued to hike through the pass until we reached a beautiful Alpine lake where we set up camp for the night. After dinner, we enjoyed a beautiful sunset before getting cozy in our tents. Around 11 p.m., shortly after most of us fell asleep, a grizzly ran across the ridge behind us. Only one person in our group actually saw this happen. This would be the first of many bear sightings during our backcountry adventure. It was another beautiful sunny day. I started off the morning drinking a coffee with Bailey's. We left the Alpine Lake and made our way towards Bremner Glacier. We hiked downhill and stopped at a scenic overlook of the glacier. If you're in this area, I highly recommend taking the extra 15 minutes to get to this overlook. The view is epic from here, and we were able to scout our route for the traverse across the glacier. We took a gully down to reach the glacier. The landscape was really cool with red rocks and massive boulders. It took us a lot of time to make our way through the moraines until we managed to find some glacier ice we could easily walk across. After a lot more boulder hopping through moraines, we were able to cross the Tana Lobe of Bremner Glacier. It was getting late and we were feeling exhausted, so we made the decision to camp on the west side of the glacier, just below the next pass we would have to climb. That evening, we walked around on the glacier and saw a black bear on the ridge above us. We packed up camp and were well on our way by 8:30 a.m. Since we camped on the west side of the glacier, we had to backtrack a short distance to get to the start of our climb up the pass. Higher up the valley, the river split into a Y. It took a while to scout a good place to cross the river. We managed to find a spot just above the Y. We took a lunch break and continued hiking up the pass. Eventually, we were in the middle of a large boulder field. The day was very long, but we set up camp at another beautiful Alpine lake. I took some time to soak my feet in the lake, which felt amazing. It was so hard to get out of my sleeping bag with the cold temperatures at the lake, until the sun started to peek out. We crossed snow patches and hopped way more boulders as we hiked down into Monahan Creek Valley. After lunch, we had to scout a place to cross Monahan Creek, and we ended up crossing the creek in two sections. We had a very early day and set up camp in a lovely meadow just below the next pass.
Oh my god, he's literally been staring at us the whole time.
Really creepy.
After a black bear greeted us in the morning hours, we climbed 2,000 feet of elevation in 1.5 miles to make it to the crest of the high pass. It was mostly talus along the way up. The footing wasn't too difficult, but there was a small section of scree and a small field of snow near the top of the pass that we had to hike through. It took us about 2.5 hours to hike from the meadow to the top of the pass. At the top, we enjoyed lunch and then continued hiking to find our next campsite. We set up camp on a grassy knoll overlooking a beautiful blue-green Alpine lake. It was the first day that the weather wasn't so great. The rain started to drop down as we were pitching our tents. It became socked in and even started snowing. On day 7, it was so exciting to wake up and know that it was our last big hiking day. We headed out in the rain towards our final destination, the historic Bremner Mine. Bremner Historic Mining District is an abandoned mining camp located 30 miles southwest of McCarthy in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. Gold was discovered here in 1901 and lots of ruins still remain. Another seemingly long and flat 1.2-mile hike from the Airstrip would lead us to the rest of the historic buildings from the 1930s and 1940s, as well as the Bremner Bunkhouse, which serves as a refuge for backcountry travelers. The bunkhouse is not a public-use cabin because it is on the National Register of Historic Places. It's equipped with a lot of fun things like a makerspace, which is part of the bunkhouse art project, games, a visitor log, and lots of reading books. With the current weather conditions being less than ideal, the bunkhouse was a cozy delight. We were able to start a fire in the wood stove to warm up and dry out our gear. We could only hope that we would get out as scheduled the following day. The next morning, our first flight was scheduled out of Bremner Mine at 9 a.m. Due to the weather conditions in the morning, we were unsure if we would be able to get out. The first flight with 2 people on board managed to leave right on time as the rest of us prepared to hike 1.2 miles to the airstrip for the next scheduled flight out. We had to mix up some of our groups to lighten the load of the other plane. I left on the second flight out with one other person in our group. The flight back to McCarthy took 20 minutes. The views were absolutely amazing, but the weather continued to get worse. It was a while before the van pulled up, and that was the moment we found out that only 2 out of the remaining 4 people were able to get out of Bremner Mine. The weather conditions got worse, and they told the last 2 people to not expect a pickup for up to 3 days. We were all pretty bummed after hearing this. The day went on, but we eventually got some good news that they would try to pick up the rest of our party around 2 p.m. Thankfully, we were all reunited about an hour later. After totaling the mileage for this trip, we hiked about 40 miles from Iceberg Lake to the Bremner Bunkhouse. We averaged about 1 mile per hour. The terrain was very difficult and my knees and knuckles ached for a whole week after we got back. I really enjoyed this trip and had a lot of fun. It was a rewarding experience in the backcountry and our group was awesome. I would love to go out and hike another route within Wrangell St. Elias National Park.